burning bush itself is a picture of God's holiness. So according to one author, Umberto Cassuto, in his commentary on the book of Exodus, so a burning thorn bush was then, and still now today, in fact, not uncommon in the Sinai desert. Right? A burning bush back then, and also still today, was not an uncommon thing in the Sinai desert. So he notes that these bushes sometimes would burst into flames spontaneously. And this is kind of worthy to note because then the fact that there was a burning bush on fire in that that Moses notices, that actually wasn't the most important eye-catching thing for Moses to witness. Rather, what made this different? And what made this special or unique and different from all the other burning bushes that Moses perhaps may have witnessed is the key here, if you look at verse 2, that the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. Right? That was what caught Moses' attention and made him turn and want to explore this a little bit more. It says in verse 3 that Moses turned aside to see this great sight, that the bush is not burned. Because that was the unique thing, right? That was what was different about this case. And it was unique. It was unique because it was God. And from this first simple point, we can draw the first key aspect of what it means for God to be holy. And that is that he is different, that he is set apart. And in fact, if you are familiar with the Bible Project, the series of videos that they put out, they do have a series on holiness, and I really like how they define what holiness is. And so the Bible Project puts it this way, that God is utterly unique. Utterly unique. Right? God's holiness is what separates him from all other beings and what makes him distinct, what makes him different, what makes him unique from everything else. And so as another author puts it, he says, God's holiness pervades his entire being and shapes all his attributes. And so his love is a holy love. His mercy is a holy mercy. And even his anger and wrath are holy anger and holy wrath. Right? Different, set apart, unique, utterly unique. And can be why it can be so hard for us to grasp what holiness is or what it means to, in fact, be holy, because that characteristic of holiness is not a characteristic that we as humans share with God. Because none of us are, in fact, holy, right? Only God is holy, utterly unique. And so it can be very tricky then for us to understand what being holy is, because that's something that no one really can describe out of firsthand experience. And that's why then after God calls Moses in verse 4 and Moses responds to him, "Here I am," God then proceeds by giving Moses two commands, right? Two things that he says in verse 5. And so the first one is this: do not come near. And we'll talk about this, right? Like, you might find that a little bit strange that God would call to Moses, but yet as Moses comes close, he says, hey, don't come, do not come near me. And this, again, was another lesson for Moses regarding being in the presence of a holy God. That there, in fact, is a vast chasm between God and humans, a divide that sets God apart from everything else. That God is totally separate in his holiness in a very, in fact, unapproachable way. And so this is kind of the first aspect that we need to understand about God being a holy God. That he is utterly unique. He is set apart.